Welcome back to Beyond the Wrench. My name is Jay Goninen, and I am your host. We have a really, really special episode this week. Our good friend Ed Roberts is joining us, and for those of you that don't know Ed, Ed has an extremely fascinating background. He's a very, very successful person and has done a lot of really, really great things in our industry. And if you've been a listener of Beyond the Wrench from the beginning, you're going to be familiar with him as a guest. We had a podcast with that, I guess probably almost a couple of years ago, and we were just talking about this prior to hopping on the podcast. But it was a really, really good podcast, and it was Ed being very transparent with his upbringing and who he is, how he got to be who he is today. So. Ed Roberts, I guess now Chief Operations Officer at Bozard Ford Lincoln. How are you doing today?
Excellent. How about you, Jay?
I'm doing good. Tell me a little bit about that change in role. I know you've got the big title now.
The title changed about a year and a half ago, and it's been almost 2.5 years since I've been on here. So it's glad to be back. I'm glad to be back, and looking forward to our deal. But for the longest time, and you came out for our grand opening, for the longest time, we was under some sort of construction. And I was a big part of managing that construction project. And once that settled down, then we made the title official. But ultimately, I was already doing a lot of those elements already, just wasn't necessarily measured against the results of them. So it wasn't a big shift on my part, but made it official for the outside to see it.
Yeah, I think that was very apparent when I made my visit down to St. Augustine that you obviously have a huge presence and a huge, I don't know, like it's a huge impact on the entire business. And from what I saw, it wasn't just even fixed ops. The whole business in its entirety, you have a pretty big influence over.
Well, it's a fun store to be a part of. We don't operate as 4 different stores or 5 different stores like a lot of dealerships do, where it's got the sales department, used department, or the new vehicle department, used car department, parts department, service, maybe a body shop if they have it, or quickly. We operate as one business, and that's the way customers view us as well. So we all tie together and work together as a team. And when you do that, everybody gets on board, pushes forward.
And you can feel that when you walk in the door, right? I was lucky enough to meet the Bozard family, and then everybody, throughout the dealership. And we've talked about in the last podcast about how impressed I was as I walked through the dealership and was able to talk to people, the entry level, porter, or the experienced technician, and everybody knew what their role was and knew where they were going. But you could tell from every position in that company that there was a kind of a genuine love for each other, and that you guys like going to battle with each other, like that like you're on the same team. And it was apparent. And like you said, I think we've all walked into dealerships before, or any business for that matter, where you can feel that tension, that the silos that you refer to, and that gets really challenging. That's not a fun place to work at.
It's not. And one thing that's good about our store is nobody's protecting themselves for their role, because everybody has a career path to move forward. And in order for them to move forward, they have to grow the person underneath them as well. So they're willing to help each other and push each other along and make progress. And when they do that, they can grow into the role that they're chasing rather than stay stagnant in a role that they may not necessarily appreciate or may not necessarily fit their skill set.
I absolutely love what you just said there. You have the process in place to where they have to grow somebody underneath them in order to go to that next step. And I think that helps teach leadership skills. I think that helps it helps the organization out in general, but it puts everybody on firm ground in terms of understanding what the next step is for them. And if they haven't developed that person underneath them, they still have work to do. And I think that, there's not a lot of dealerships that say that up front, or again, a lot of businesses that say that up front, like, hey, you've got to develop that person underneath you. But in a lot of cases, that's true. They just don't say it, and they don't communicate it to the person that's actually looking to make a move.
Exactly, and they fight it in different ways that doesn't necessarily tie together. Over the last couple of years, we've had the great resignation, we've had the quietly quitting, and whatever, however we want to avoid that. But truly, what it is our younger generations want to see what tomorrow looks like. They want to know what tomorrow looks like. So if you bring them in and put them in a dead-end job, they're probably looking for the next job. But if you bring them in and you put them in a job that has a career path where they know what that next step is, they may get to a point to where they don't want to take that next step and just kind of be comfortable where they're at, but they know what they have to do to get there. And when you do that, you minimize or virtually eliminate turnover. We're going to have probably 3.5% turnover this year as we wrap up 2022, and about 3% in 2021. So that is uncharacteristic in almost any business, but certainly uncharacteristic in the automobile industry.
I was going to say, I think was it Automotive News that just came out with the stats on turnover of service advisors and technicians. Service advisors, I think industry average is almost 50% turnover, and technicians aren't far behind that. And to have the dealership as a whole at 3.5% turnover is unheard of. That is crazy. So huge testament to you guys, and I think being able to treat people well is what really is, we're going to talk about employer branding today, because I think Bozard has done a different level job of being able to create a brand that people want to come work for. It's a destination at this point to where people want to go work for Bozard. With the employer branding, the one thing that I think might be underestimated is you actually have to be a good place to work before you can have a good employee brand, right? You have to be a place that the people that are inside your house already love being at. Otherwise, regardless of what you do from a marketing standpoint, it ain't going to work, right?
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of times we put our focus on the wrong things, and we focus on how do we drive good CSI? Well, you can't drive good CSI without the right ESI. If employees aren't happy to be there, they're not going to drive CSI. So there's not an individual in our store that gets paid off of CSI. They get paid to do their job. And it's our job to create the atmosphere that they want to be in, because happy employees make happy customers. And without that, let's look at it from an advisor standpoint. You talked about NADA and Automotive News talking about what the turnover is of advisors. It's one of the toughest jobs in the dealership. They got a customer standing in front of them that's upset that they just bought this vehicle, whatever it may cost, some over 100, some 50,000, whatever it may be. They spend a bunch of money on the vehicle. Now it's broken, and there's never a good time for their vehicle to break. So they're wearing them out. And then the technician's mad at them because they can't sell anything for whatever the reasons may be. Parts wasn't available, it took too long, whatever. Customer was ready to check out when they brought them, whatever it may be. The technician's mad at them because my advisor don't sell me nothing. And then management's ripping their head off because their CSI isn't where it needs to be. Their hours per RO isn't where it needs to be. The dollars per RO isn't where it needs. So there's no break for the advisor. And so you have to shift that mindset and take care of the employee. Then the employee takes care of the customer. But let's say that I bring an advisor in and I have a conversation with him about, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing this. Even if I offered a path to help him do that better, what's his mindset going to be as soon as he comes in contact with the next customer? He's not shifted into, I'm ready to take care of, I'm ready to serve. He's shifted into, okay, I got to protect what they just chatted with me about. I got to protect my job. And the customers pick up on that vibe. So, and we could talk about that from any role. We could talk about it from a technician role where they have the manufacturer struggles with approvals and all those elements as well. So you got to shift to how do we make it to where someone wants to be here. Then when you do, it isn't the Ford or the Lincoln brand that we sell. It's the Bozard brand. And when you set those things in place, they invite their friends. And there's a reason why we've grown from 7 technicians to 93 today. And it's easier to bring those people in because there's a list of people waiting. We grow our own technicians as a rule. We grow our own advisors. We grow our own salespeople. We grow all those things, but still there is opportunity when things happen or growth happens faster than we can grow people, where we bring an outsider in. And there was an advisor that we hired, I don't know, right about the time we did the last podcast, that waited 2.5 years to get there. and continued on with the other job that was at. That's where they wanted to be. And then as soon as I picked up the phone, it was no question of whether they was going to be there or not. It was a matter of when. And then I interviewed someone just yesterday, and they said, I'm perfectly fine where I'm at, but if I ever get an opportunity to come here, this is where I want to be. So if it happens today, if it happens tomorrow, if it happens 3 years from now, don't forget about me. This is where I want to be, and I'm going to be checking in with you periodically until that happens. And when those things take place, that's pretty freaking cool to be a part of, because you're not spending all of your time looking to replace the people that you're losing, or looking to bring people in to shorten that window of time to get somebody in for service. It happens as a natural progression.
Just different, right? And I think everybody's looking for that secret sauce of, okay, why is it that people want to line up and come work for you? And I want to dive into the day-to-day a little bit. You had mentioned that, if you can't drive good CSI if you don't have good ESI, employee satisfaction. And I want to talk about that employee satisfaction in a little bit more detail. I know we've talked about your progression of technicians and really how you grow your own. But once they get to be that veteran technician and they're getting up, what is it that you find effective for keeping your technicians happy? And I'll start with technicians. I actually do want to go back to the service advisor thing at some point too, because I do think that's a really important element of our business that is overlooked a lot of times. So let's start with the technician side. But say you've got that 20-year technician who, is coming in, day out, and at times it can be a grind, right? Like I think like any job, there's tough days, but what do you do to keep those people happy?
It's a multitude of things. There's no one thing. There's no one silver bullet. With them having a path to where every service manager faces the point of time where a technician comes in and says, hey, I don't want to do this all my life. Well, because they face challenges and whatever else, and they see ones that are starting to age out and retire and the shape that they're in, and they envision themselves there. But when there's paths to go down, it eliminates that, because now they know what they have to do. Or you have that conversation with them that when they say, I don't want to do this all my life, you say, okay, well, these are the things you got to do something different. And they know that they have to flip that switch to do that. And it's up to them to do it. And when you put it back in their court, most of them will, if they truly mean that. And someone just say, I'm content. And you need that guy that's going to do it for 30 years. But it doesn't have to be all of them, and because you got the opportunity for the others to grow, and then they become mentors for the one underneath them. And it is hard for me to sit here, or I can sit here and explain it and make it sound all fancy or whatever it is. But when you come and experience it in person, you think, oh my God. And you just, like you said, you feel it when you walk in the door, and you feel it when as people are communicating with each other. And someone was at our store 2 days ago, and they asked, how do we do that? How do we have that culture to where it feels like it's one business and not several silos? And I just took them up to somebody. And I said, I'm going to let you ask this person that, and I'll let them answer the question.
Oh, that's great.
And those are the things that makes the difference. So yes, it's a different culture, and that's what we've built. And there's a lot of intentionality to it, but there's a lot of things that kind of lead to that, where a lot of times in these roles, especially advisor roles, salesman roles, technician roles, you come in and really it boils down, it pushes down or up to however you want to look at it, to a management role as well, where you just come in and survive the day. You come in and put out the fires. And when someone tells me, I've just been putting out fires all day long, well, we have to shift that to be a fire preventer rather than be a firefighter. But what we do when we're putting out fires all day long is we're coming in and reacting to the day, and we're coming in just to survive the day. And nobody wins when we do that. You go home, you're exhausted, you think, oh my God, I want to go back and do this again tomorrow. But when you come in with the mindset that I'm going to make an impact today, and make a list of things that needs to get done and things that you can make an impact on. And it doesn't have to be anything great. It doesn't have to be anything state of the art. It's just shifting your mind to doing something that makes an impact on the business. And if you don't get anything done that day, move them all to the next day. But you need to check something off one or two times that week, and that continues to compound week after week after week, because there is no one silver bullet.
No.
Another thing that I like to tell my people, and we hear this, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with traveling the first mile. So we have that conversation, putting it into perspective with work, that you cannot get from A to B without traveling from A to B, and you have to do something to start. Sitting back and think, man, if I could just get there, it doesn't get you there. You got to do something. So every day I tell our guys that let's make a list of what you need to do, because you can't travel that trip of 1,000 miles without traveling the first mile. So your first thing that you need to get done today is your first mile. Doesn't matter what it is. What's your first mile? So that's what I walk around and ask people, what's your first mile today? And they tell you, well, the next thing that's on your list is not the second mile, because you've already traveled that mile. It's done. That's your next first mile. So it's always what's next on your list, what's next for you to work on. And when you shift to that mindset, even when you have days that consume you and you just did survive, you got the mindset that I need to make an impact tomorrow. And it starts all over again. But don't change your list unless something caused you to change that list. Stay focused on it and keep putting forth the effort to move that next step. And you make progress. Then you go home with a sense of satisfaction rather than a sense of surviving.
One of the things we do at WrenchWay is help technicians find great places to work. If you think your shop is a top shop, we want to hear from you. WrenchWay Top Shop pages are like resumes for shops. They share all the details technicians want to know about before they apply, such as compensation ranges for all levels, photos and videos of the service area, videos of technicians and managers, and frequently asked questions on work environment, career development, and hiring process. Attract more technicians to your shop by becoming a WrenchWay Top Shop. Visit wrenchway.com to contact us and learn more. Link is in the show notes.
How do you get the people, or how do you judge the people that, say you're going through the interview process and you want to talk to them about this first mile, and you want them to be self-motivated enough to even do the checklist and do some of the things that, you know, you want in a good employee, right? You want them to be motivated on their own at some level, but also be able to take coaching and allow you to motivate them as well. How important is the right personality when you're bringing them into the dealership, regardless of position?
You have to be intentional about who you hire, and it's intentionality and purpose. What am I trying to accomplish, and does this person fit that? And so anybody that's heard me talk before, I talk about the 3 C's a lot, and that is very intentional with how we hire people. Because there is people out there that can absolutely make things happen, but they sometimes make a tidal wave behind them that causes a bunch of other stuff not to happen or go astray, and that doesn't necessarily fit. It doesn't develop the atmosphere to grow people and to allow them to step outside the box and try something new. So those 3 C's is character. Are they the person that we want representing our brand? It is a judgment call, but you should be able to figure those things out if you're asking the right questions in an interview and not just trying to go through the process of, are they breathing? Can they fog a mirror?
It's funny that you say that, because I was at an advisory committee meeting for our local tech school last night, and one of the dealerships joked about that, you know, basically taking anybody that'll fog a mirror. And I'm like, that's the problem. Like, if you have that mindset, you're not going to change anything. You're not going to create that culture that's a pull type culture. You know, you're really setting yourself back. So I you know, when you say that, I think people really need to take that seriously.
Well, let's think outside the box there for a second. You're married. I'm in a serious relationship. When we step outside there, we don't go marry the first person that can fog a mirror that we come in contact with. There's some intentionality there. That's why we date. It's the same thing. You just got to shift it to that mindset. But we get so bogged down, and man, I just need people. If I can get some people in here. Well, sometimes those people don't necessarily fit. And when they do that, they just cause you more grief, and then all you're doing is intensifying your ability to survive the day. And nobody wins in that. And the next C is competency. And that is, can you do the job? And that's rare that we look for somebody that can do the job, because we always want to grow our people. But sometimes our growth rate outruns how fast we can grow people, so we do. But the more on the other side of that is, are you teachable? Can you be competent in this role? Does it fit your skill set? And if those elements are yes, then we've checked the second C. But you got to check all three of them before we're going to say, okay, I think we can make this work. Let's figure this out. And then the third one is probably the most important. And the third one is chemistry. What do you bring that complements the team? And if you're teachable, that's fine. That's great. That's the chemistry or the competency piece of it. If you're the right person, that's the character piece that we want representing our brand. But the chemistry, do you bring something to the team that complements us? And two things that people control 100% that I can't help them with is attitude and effort. And if they don't bring those two things, then they're not going to contribute to the team. So we have to, does their personality match up with the ones that we have? Can they connect with them and relate with them and be able to bring something? And that's the chemistry piece. But truly, and I say that's one of the most important. All three are important. If you don't check all three of those, you're not necessarily a candidate for us. And you could be extremely competent and be able to do the job, but not fit in or not be somebody that we want to represent our brand. And the answer is no, even though you can fog a mirror.
So when you talk about those three C's, how are you judging that? Is it they all have to be at a 10 at each level, or like say if you're on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you judging that? Is it just more of a conversation and talking through the three C's, or is it a ranking, or like how do you look at that?
It is very much a conversational piece. And when you're talking from a competency standpoint, if you're talking to somebody and says, I know, and I got that, and yeah, I've been there already, I've done that, I don't have rechecks, whatever it may be, that guy's kind of stuck in his ways, and you're not necessarily going to make that progress with him. But sometimes it's nervousness that causes that, so you got to bring them in and relax. And like I said, I interviewed someone yesterday, and that's what I told him. He says, man, I don't interview good, I'm nervous. I said, just relax, we're just having a conversation. And just connect with them and learn who they are. But sometimes the nerves can get in the way and confuse you, so that's where you have to have the intentionality of, am I seeing what this person is, or is it the environment they're in right now? And a lot of it's judgment calls.
I think one of the things that I'll give you a huge compliment on is I think you have an innate ability to get people's guards down, right? You don't seem threatening. You don't seem that, you're the boss running around and, yelling at everybody. It's more of just, you bring them in, and whether it's a potential employee or somebody that's on your team, I feel like you give them a safe space to where they feel comfortable talking to you. And I know I've talked to others in the industry that have talked to you as well. I think you do that with everybody. I think that's your personality. And I think that alone is such a big piece to building a good team and a good culture where people feel safe to actually have good, honest conversations. Because I know from what I've seen across the industry, not everybody's that way. Not every shop is that way. And maybe that technician doesn't give you their true feelings when they sit down and talk to you because they're afraid that they're going to get yelled at, or they're going to be belittled or not treated like a human being. And I think, again, that's one compliment for you that I think you're probably better at than about anybody, is giving people a safe space to feel comfortable talking to you. Do you feel like that's a kind of a strong part of your game in terms of how you interact with people?
I want to connect with people, so yes, I do feel that way. And Simon Sinek has a book that says start with why, and what he's saying is learn what the person is, what their reasoning is, why do they want to do it. And it goes on with business and whatever else. Let's look at it from an employee standpoint. Their why is not to show up to Bozard Ford Lincoln and produce us hours or sell us cars or sell service work or sell parts, whatever it may be. That's not their why. that's the access to fuel their why. Their why is their family, their kids' sports, whatever it may be, riding motorcycles, or whatever their hobbies are. That's their why. And the job is the enabler. So you got to connect with them, find what their why is, and then have those type conversations. A lot of times we'll pass through the shop or pass through the sales department, and how's your day going? And we may listen to the answer or listen for a response, but we're not really caring what it is. But stop, slow down, and ask, what'd you do last night? Or what do you got planned for this weekend? And if you ask somebody what they got planned for this weekend, they'll tell you they're going to watch, I don't know, a Gator game or whatever it may be, or this or that or the other. It's a big rivalry weekend. Don't come back Monday and ask them what you do this weekend.
Ask them how the game was.
Exactly. Connect with them, and if their kid plays football, make sure that you can connect with them and find out when they're playing and what their schedule is and whatever else, and make it available to them. Because truly, what happens is a lot of times they need to get out of there to go to their kid's game, but they're afraid to approach you, so they come and tell you, "Man, I think I ate something bad for lunch, and I'm not feeling good, and I got to go." And what are you going to say to that point? You got to let them go. You can't hold on to them at that point. So. But the reality is, you should already know. And hey, your kid's got a game at 4:30 this afternoon. What time are you leaving? And preparing that atmosphere for them to be able to do that, in that open space or that safe space. And when you create that, the rest of it just comes. So they want to come talk to you about how the game went. They want to talk to you about rivalry weekend. They want to talk to you about those things. And that's a connection that a lot of people miss, but it's very intentional. It's learning the why. When they tell you it's their wife's birthday this weekend, program it in your calendar so you can remind them next year and ask them how it went. Just it's easy to do. You just have to put forth the effort.
Well, so many people point to money, right? Like it's money, it's money, it's money. And those little things go such a long way with a person. And again, I hate to simplify it down to this level, but it's like, can we just treat people like human beings? Like treat them like they're actual people that you respect. And again, I go back to experiences that I've seen around the industry where I don't see that everywhere. I don't see people going out and interacting with their technicians unless they absolutely have to. When I say people, leadership, going out and really making the rounds. You hear so much about managing by walking around. And I think that's such an important factor to get to know your people. I've personally gone into dealerships. I'll kind of corner dealerships here a little bit, where you'll walk through a shop with a senior leader and they're like speed walking through the shop and hoping that nobody talks to them, right? And you're like, no, man, like this is not the way to do that. And they're so worried. They're worried about that if they start a conversation, it's going to pull that person off that job and they're not going to be producing hours. And people wonder why they can't develop a good culture. And I mean, what message is that sending to your people if you won't even take the time to just stop and have a general chat with them?
So you're right. Everybody on the leadership side ties it to money. But when you do the surveys, people leave their boss. And you're exactly right. They blow right through in hopes that nobody asks them a question because they're afraid they're going to ask them for something they don't want to give them or whatever it may be or may not have the answer to. But that's not how you get there. You got to connect with them. Those are the people that make it happen for you. Those are people that earn your paycheck. Because for the last several years, I haven't been a productive employee. I have productive employees that work for me, and there has to be that ratio, the right ratio there. But you have to know who's getting it done for you. And we all know that people want to do business with people. That's reality. That's the relationship of sales, relationship or whatever. But also it's that way in-house as well. People want to work with people. You get these big corporations where nobody talks to anybody and whatever else, and they always tell you, I feel like just a number here. And that's because there's not that people connection. And so take the time to connect with them and don't make them feel like a number. No matter how big you get, you can still find time to connect. But you have to make sure you're intentional and not put yourself in a position where you're just surviving the day every single day, because then you don't have the time to do it.
No, and it sucks to go into work every day when you have that mentality. And there's times where maybe you just get in a rut because of it. And that doesn't, you talk about productivity, that backfires in spades. It's very, very difficult.
This week's episode of Beyond the Wrench is brought to us by RepairPal. RepairPal connects consumers with certified, trustworthy repair shops. RepairPal's network of over 2,700 shops nationwide undergo a rigorous certification process to ensure they are high quality. If you're interested in working or getting your car serviced at a trusted shop in RepairPal Certified Shop Network, check out their directory of auto shops at repairpal.com.
One thing I wanted to ask was around, we talked about this in the last podcast, but your story, how you started out in the business, you started out at the ground floor. How important was it for you to kind of almost go through that same career path that you're sharing with your people now, starting off at a lower level and then working your way up through the dealership? Because I think there's got to be some impact in you being able to say that you've walked the walk, right? Is that a big factor in your leadership style?
It is absolutely a big factor, not necessarily because I've wanted it to be that way, but people look at me knowing my history and say, if he can do it, I can do it. And that's exactly how I went through it. And I want to create that path for them. That path wasn't necessarily there when I went through. I started as an apprentice tech and kind of had to carve my way through and make things happen and push doors open. And I did that because I look at the next person in front of me as they're no better than I am. They put on their pants one leg at a time, just like I do. They go to bed at night. They eat. They go through all the same motions. They're no better than I am. If they can do it, I can do it. But I had to go and kick doors open and I say that aggressively, but it wasn't aggressive. It was, you capitalize on opportunity, you make things happen, you make yourself available. But the path wasn't there. I had to go in and kind of carve that path. But the availability to carve that path was there. And there is other people that can do those same things that just may not be put forth the effort to carve the path because they don't see it. And a lot of people can't see what's not there. So it's been my deal to kind of create that path. And if the opportunity is there, if you want it, I'm not going to push you down it, but you know what it takes to get there. And we provide the tools for you to get there. And when you have that conversation in an interview process, I don't care if they're looking at 12 stores. They've just erased 11 of them because you're where they're coming. And there's times, and I love to do this, there's times where I ask them, why'd you choose us? And occasionally there's somebody that doesn't know anything about us, and they said, well, I drove by on the interstate and saw it and figured I'll check it out. Okay. Well, I want you to go interview with somebody else. Or maybe they told me they just left somewhere else. And I want them to go there. I said, but before you take a job, come back to me. And they'll come back and say, man, I sat in the waiting room for 2.5 hours for anybody to even talk to me, or I do this, or I do that, and whatever. There's no question where I want to be. And that's all I want to do is when we pull the trigger to hire somebody, there's always that nervousness of starting a new job. And is this the right place? Is it whatever else? And when you can eliminate that and take away in their mind that should I have went there, then they're focused on doing our job and the job at hand and making progress there rather than looking on the computer, see that other opening still there.
That confidence that you have in getting them to go somewhere else to interview, I think is incredible because it shows that you've got confidence up front. It shows that, you've got your ducks in a row. You're not insecure enough to worry about them going elsewhere to interview because you know in your heart of hearts you're the best place to work down there, right? Like that is your mindset. And that, again, is something that I don't feel you see very often. And I want to kind of circle back to what you talked about earlier in the podcast, where you had mentioned that you've got this wait list of people that want to come work for you. And it allows you the patience to be able to say something like that, right? And I think this is so much of an ecosystem, if you will, and just to paint a visual of an ecosystem to where you've created a great company that treats their people well, that then allows you to promote your employer brand, to drive more people in to want to work for you, and not be so desperate that you have to hire that one body, right? You can talk to multiple people. And I know, and I'm sure you see it all over the country as well, where there's not a lot of businesses a lot of dealerships or independent shops, doesn't matter what it is. There's not a lot that can say that same thing. I mean, I'm guessing I can count them on one hand how many people have a wait list right now of people to come work for them. And I'm wondering if you kind of think of it that way as well, where that you have kind of that ecosystem of great place to work, which then creates this powerful employer brand, which then gets you people, which, I mean, it just seems like a well-run machine, if you will.
It's its own ecosystem for sure. Let's carry that a little deeper, because, and this isn't just an automotive industry, but we're going to talk about it from the automotive industry. This is kind of worldwide, I guess, so to speak. We don't prepare our people for their first day, and let's dial in on that a little bit. People don't like to go to a car dealership to buy a car. It's intimidating. There's people standing out there they don't know, whatever. They don't like to come to a car dealership to get service. They don't know where to go when they get there. There's all kinds of stuff happening. Well, guess what? Those are people that we do business with. And people do business with people. So they do business with the people that we hire. And our people's those same people. They come in. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to go talk to the interview with or whatever else. They're intimidated. It's a big old giant place. It's 10 times the place that they used to work at. So, and then we intensify that. We agree. We agree on them coming to work there. They can work there in day one. And then we tell them, I want you to start on Monday the 10th. And Monday the 10th comes around. You're coming in, reacting to the day. They show up. They don't want to interrupt you. They see that you're busy. So they stand out there, and then finally you connect with them 30 minutes later. Oh, yeah, forgot you was coming. And I got some paperwork for you to fill out. You stick them off in the corner, and you let them fill out paperwork. And then you come back to them an hour later, and you say, okay, stand by this guy. This guy's going to teach you everything you need to know. And then you stand them by somebody, and that person didn't know they was coming in. Maybe they did, but most of the time not. And when that new employee goes to lunch that day, all of his friends that knew that he was starting a new job or she was starting a new job, and they're, hey, man, how's it going, blah, 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 blah. Whether it's through text, whether it's through Snapchat, however we're TikToking or whatever we're doing, their answer is, I don't know, hadn't really done much, filled out some paperwork, stood beside this guy. But what if we prepared for day one? And we already had them fill out that paperwork that they needed to start, because if you've already made the decision to hire them, let's get everything done that needs to be done to be hired. When they get there, you're handing them their business cards, and you're handing them their name tag, and you're giving them their access to their DMS that we usually don't give them until they're 2 weeks in. And we're giving them all the tools that they need to succeed, and we're making it an event. Now we got them taking a picture, a selfie of their name tag and their business card, sending it to their buddies. Man, this place is cool to be at. It's just preparing them for it. And now their friends, rather than saying, okay, well, just give it a couple days, it'll be fun. Now their friends are thinking, man, that's cool. I want to come to work there. So there's a lot of intentionality that goes with it, but it's just preparation.
You hit on something that I think so many people miss out on, in that first week of work can create so much anxiety within a person and really make them uncomfortable. I think we've all been through that first week of work where it stinks. And like you said, the point that you made about not wanting to bother somebody, I think is common amongst everybody, right? You see that, your boss is talking with customers or talking with other employees, trying to get everybody running. Normally Monday mornings at a dealership or any shop are chaotic and trying to get everything rolling. And having that structure up front so they don't feel like an inconvenience to you is so underrated. It's such an important piece, because just like everything that you just said, it just resonated with me so much because it is so true that if they don't know where to park, and for those of you that haven't been to Bozard or been past Bozard, it's a big dealership. It's a big building. I guarantee it can be intimidating for a new hire. But if you're going through the preparation of walking them through what they should expect that first day, when they walk in the door, they probably feel a little bit more comfortable knowing, hey, I've got to go talk to so-and-so, and I kind of know what they look like, and I've talked to them before, maybe through the interview process, and it just makes them feel more comfortable, right? I mean, it makes that feel more like that family feel of, hey, you're joining a pretty awesome family here.
Makes them feel part of the team right out of the gate, and that's where you want to be. And then they're bringing the ones in that they want to work with as well.
Yeah, you're, and again, so that's another strategy to be able to build that bench. If they're telling their friends about it, I still say we have a company, WrenchWay, that is literally like, that's something we promote for our clients is make sure you're laying out that process. Make sure that you're getting that first day down so that it's not so awkward and you're not, that technician that gets shoved in the back next to their toolbox and is afraid to talk to anybody. Like, actually make it a welcoming, warm place to be. Here's where you go grab the snacks. Here's where, I can't say this enough, but treating them like a human being, treating them like somebody's coming to your home and helping them feel comfortable. I've been in situations where I haven't felt that, right? And even as a senior leader at a company, to remain nameless, it didn't feel that way. And it's very off-putting, and it doesn't give you the mindset like, hey, I'd tell my friends to come work here at all. Like, it's the opposite of like, run.
Exactly. And you're going to do those things anyway. It's not like you're doing something additional on those things. You're going to do them. You're just not waiting 3 weeks for them to get all those pieces to come together. You're preparing them from day one. And so everybody becomes more efficient when you just get it out of the way. And then not only do they become more efficient, but they become more comfortable. But think about it from a technician that's changing brands. He may be a very capable technician, but if he's just moved over from brand Z to brand A, there's a different way to communicate with the manufacturer, and you have to communicate with them for almost anything now. And they may be the greatest technician out there, but there's still elements that's going to be walls for them if you don't overcome them and help them get through those things. And whether that's creating a buddy system for them in that situation or whatever it may be, help them prepare to not question, man, I shouldn't have never left brand Z. This brand A is too different for me. Well, at the end of the day, they're still vehicles. They're still 4 tires. Most of them are still an ICE engine. Some of them are EV, but everything's still the same. It may just have different components that's built by a different supplier, but all those elements are there, and we got to help them overcome those differences. And doing that, we again take the question out: did I make the right decision? Should I look and see if that other ad's still there? It makes it smoother for them. And then he's reaching back out to brand Z. Guys, you don't know what you're missing.
I love it. One of the pieces that I think drives anxiety for a current day technician are the changes that are happening within the industry, right? I think we all see it where EV is becoming more and more of a presence every day. The technology that's being presented to us is changing the game. I mean, we're watching the industry change it right in front of our eyes. How do you prepare your staff for this transition? And really, you've got kind of 1 foot on the ICE side still, 1 foot on the EV side, and trying to navigate that, one, as a senior leader at a large dealership, trying to manage your own kind of mindset going into it, but then managing the mindset of your team and how you adapt to the coming changes, because we know they're coming. It's just a matter of being able to maybe grasp it and understand it. So I'm curious as to how you view this transition to EV and what you've seen so far.
Jay, I'm glad you asked that. I absolutely love change. I tell people all the time the automobile industry is 30 years behind. We're fortunate here at Bozard to not quite be that far behind, so we look like we're very forward-thinking. And I would say we are forward-thinking, but I love changing the industry. Let's talk about before I go into that, let's talk about the technicians that we have out there today. As far as we talk about there being a shortage, and there is a shortage of technicians. So trying to hire the guys from down the street doesn't fix the shortage, because those guys are going to try to hire your guys. We got to try to give back. And over the last 30 to 40 years, we got a lot of tenured technicians that's been in the business 30 to 40 years. Well, think about how much the automobile industry has changed in that 40 years. Previous to that, we didn't invest a ton of money in training them. If they was mechanically inclined, they kind of figure out a car and be able to fix it. But now, as fuel injection came into play, and that continued to progress, and now we got all this infotainment stuff, and cars are computer driven now. It has changed that technician, and we've kind of, over those 30, 40 years, kind of evolutionized those guys. But now those guys are starting to retire. And we have so much invested in them, we're thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to do that? Well, that's our opportunity to take that and extend their career, because they can't do it as fast and efficient physically as they used to be able to, and develop some type of program where they can give back to the younger ones that can. And let's face it, the job is not as physically demanding as it used to be 30 years ago, when we had cast iron cylinder heads and all the weight of all that kind of stuff. It's not as demanding physically today. It is still demanding physically, but it's not as it was 20 and 30 years ago. So we don't need to have that conversation if we're going to take these guys and help develop newer people with them. Because if we're telling you don't want to do this, you don't know what it's going to do to your body, that's not the conversation. So you gotta get that out of the way up front, because it is demanding and it is physical, but it isn't what it was then. And there's so many tools to help you with that. So create that. But that's kind of the segue into what you just asked about changing the industry with shifting to EV. Man, I'm excited about EVs coming into the industry because, one, the industry has kind of needed an evolution. Or maybe revolution, however we want to look at that, because the ICE engine's been around for well over 100 years, and it'll still be around for the next 50, 60, 70, whatever years. It's going to be around for the rest of our lifetimes, yeah. But yeah, the EV vehicle, most people are commuters. It fits what they need to do, but it allows us to be able to hire and recruit and look for a different technician. It's cool to be a tech guy. It's cool to mess with computers. It's cool to, there's almost a gamer type person that you can go look for to work on EVs, because it's not the grease monkey that it used to be. And so don't go look in the same places that we've always looked to find that mechanically inclined guy. Look for somebody that's a gamer or whatever that likes to mess with computers, because these things are computers on wheels. And now we can start pulling people back into the industry, or pulling people into the industry that we haven't had for so many years and had a tough reputation to overcome, because you got to go be a mechanic. There's nothing wrong with being a mechanic. I was a mechanic, and I worked my way through it, and it's been a good career for me. And that's the picture we got to paint. But it just widened our window of people that we can bring into this. And because you can open the hood on an EV, and it's just a storage place. So these guys will be coming, working on vehicles, sitting inside the vehicle with a computer, a laptop. And there is times that there'll need to be some mechanical stuff done. But it allows us to, like that Geek Squad van that shows up at your house when you buy something from Best Buy. That's the kind of guy that's going to work on these cars moving forward. And we got to get out of our mind that I can only do it with these senior guys that's done it. Yes, they can do it too. And they have proven it, and they've done a phenomenal job for us. But now let's look for some new talent of someone that's excited about these skateboards with a body on top of them.
That's a good way to explain it. Ford has been one of the more, I would say, progressive manufacturers as it relates to the dealer relationship. I think now separating the two into two different segments, really. How has that posed any challenges for you guys, or how have you viewed that? Was it surprising to you that Mr. Farley had kind of sent this out, or was it kind of expected that there was going to be a shift at some level?
there is a lot of noise in the Ford world and with Farley and various different things with the EV shift. But I got to tell you, a lot of things in our business have been so restricted because someone's afraid to be the one that does that and break that ice and break that mold. And Farley's not afraid to do that. And there's a lot of negative talk about what it's going to take for an EV dealer to be, what it needs to be, and whatever. And maybe I'm the eternal optimist. Maybe not. I don't know on that, but I see nothing but opportunity there. And if you want to stay in the ice business, you're Ford Blue. That's the ice business, and it's going to be strong, especially on the truck side. It's going to be strong for decades to come, and you can make a very good living doing that from sales and service. But the Model E, the EV side of it, is new products coming. So what they're really doing, from my standpoint, is they just took my franchise and gave me some steroids to dump on it and make it huge if I choose to accept. And I'm always about forward growth and progress and whatever else. So I love the separation. I love that he's not saying, hey, all of you guys can be all things to all people, because there's not. There's prep that needs to come along with it. And so, yes, do we need superchargers in the store? Yes, we need superchargers, because a lot of times when we sell these EVs, the customer doesn't have an infrastructure, and we can't sell an EV with 25% charge because it's going to take a day to charge it on another charger or whatever else. So what is outlined there is great. It is change. Most people are resistant to change up front, but the industry has needed it, and they're going to embrace it. Our clients are going to embrace it. We find the negative, and then it hurts us on the sales side, because when a customer comes in to buy an EV and they're a first-time EV buyer and they've done all the research, they've researched it for probably months. And then they come in, and the first thing they do is come in contact with a salesperson. Oh, you don't want that because all we've done is made noise. Let me show you this. That EV ain't where it needs to be yet. Battery technology isn't where it needs to be. And what that customer is saying in his mind is, I'm going to buy an EV, but you just showed me or convinced me that it's not going to be with you. And then they walk out the door and they go somewhere else, and you see them rolling around in a Tesla or whatever else because someone was excited about it. So not just the infrastructure that we got to get excited about, we got to get our people excited about EVs as well. And what I found, the easiest way to get our people excited about EVs is put them in and let them drive it. And when you put them in them, you let them drive it, it is something different than they've ever experienced. And that's what they talk about for days. Oh man, did you drive that Mach-E? Did you do that? And it changes their mindset, so it creates a different conversation when that customer says, I want to look at that.
There's so much there to unpack of what you just said, and starting with the mindset of just loving the change, which is, I think, contrary to what most in the industry feel, because it is a large upfront expense and it is a lot of preparation. But as you mentioned, it might not be for everybody. And maybe that's where Farley did a good job at kind of dissecting the difference between the two. How are you going to approach this from a Bozard standpoint? Is it a separate building? Is it as I'm reading all of the news clips of everything that's going on with this, is it a different business altogether where it's a different building, different staff? Is it within the same building? Give me an idea of how that's going to look.
Well, and it may evolve differently, but I'll tell you how we are today. And today it's not a different building. It's not a different staff. It will be a different staff. But one of the things that has always been successful for us is when there's change in the industry, there's the naysayers that come along with it. And they waste whatever time, the 2 weeks, the 2 months, the 6 months, the years of talking about why that can't be the situation. And for us, we embrace it right from the beginning. And when we embrace it from the beginning, we get a leg up on the others. And so we've already been installing chargers and various different things way beyond what Ford has asked us to do. One, because we can put it on the grid, and when someone else on a non-Ford product needs a charge in our area, I just happen to have a restaurant there for them as well, so they can come there, they can get the charge. They can go to
Great
the
restaurant, by the way.
Absolutely. And then it makes it cool to go to a car dealer. It takes away their fear, their anxiety. Oh my God, where do I go? And if I can get them coming there twice a month to have dinner or have a lunch or whatever else, I'm going to be the first person that comes to mind when it is time for them to shift out and look for their next vehicle or whatever else. So if they're not working today, we already have 8 chargers on property, but I'm having 3 more put in, and they're supposed to finish them up today. If they're not working today, they'll be working tomorrow. And then I'll be at 11 chargers long before it's even the requirement time frame to even be signed up. We're already going to be at what we need to be. So it doesn't scare us a bit. We're ready for it. We want to be ahead, and it's a decision to do that.
This takes me maybe even back a little bit further, and this feels like the manufacturer-dealer relationship. And I've talked about this in other podcasts before, but one that has always fascinated me. I believe there's a lot of dealers that will fight back against the manufacturer, or kind of challenge or question everything that a manufacturer is doing, and almost it pits one against the other, right? And what I just heard from you is that it's not fighting against your reps. It's not really fighting against the manufacturer, but more so embracing what they're bringing to you because maybe they've got a different level of knowledge about something than you do. Can you talk to me a little bit about that dealer-manufacturer relationship in general?
Well, one, with being forward-thinking, they look at us to help them pilot programs, so that makes it a little bit easier. But a lot of times, like we said earlier, some people can't see things differently than what they are today. So when the manufacturer comes to them with a change, the first thing they want to do is defend what they already have and defend what they're doing and defend why they need to stay the same. And they never need to stay the same, most likely. But sometimes the manufacturer does dip off into something and try to tell us how to do business because they want conformity. They want similarities across the brand. And I get that. And sometimes they can be a little too forceful with that, or they haven't thought about what the adverse reaction of that'll be or whatever. And that's where you got to be a good partner and say, hey, we got to look at it this way rather than you're freaking crazy. Let's look at what the other side of that is and truly treat it as a partnership. Because as long as you have a new model brand, oval, whatever it may be, emblem, hanging out in front of your store, you are a partner with a manufacturer. And you have to treat it as a true partnership. And your partner in business, we wouldn't reach out to them like we reach out to some of these manufacturers. We reach out to them differently. Hey, let's get on the same page. We're not on the same page here. It's the same thing we have to do there. We have to work with the manufacturer to get them on the same page. And when you do that, they're more apt to call and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. How does that look? And then you make that transition so much easier going forward. But to fight them the whole time, well, when you fight somebody, it becomes a matter of who's going to win this battle. And the manufacturer is bigger than all of us, so you know who's going to win it most of the time. So why not be that partner with the manufacturer rather than being the resistor with them?
I spent a fair amount of my career on the manufacturer side, and I can tell you, any of you that have that vendor type of relationship or the partnerships that come along with a dealer manufacturer type of relationship, the people on the manufacturing side are still human beings, right? And they're still, because they're representing the manufacturer at times, it can turn into an adversarial relationship. And I don't think most factory reps or factory leadership really crave that. They're not trying to piss you off, right? They're trying to make you a really good, profitable business. And it was always, I had worked with a lot of different rooftops, right? A lot of different businesses when I was on the manufacturing side. And it was crazy to me, the differences between dealerships, even though, the manufacturer is trying to create uniformity. A lot of times, as soon as you walk in the door, similar to we talk about your culture and how different that was, you could feel that when a dealer that you were a rep for was holding something back or trying to hide something, or, didn't want to be transparent with information, you could feel that. And what it causes is some level of distrust, and it causes maybe that rep to look further into you, or it causes maybe that, it causes a weird relationship, to be honest. And I think the more you can be transparent from the dealer end and talking through things rather than just, fighting with the rep or constantly being the contrarian to whatever the rep is saying, I think you can have a really valuable resource in your factory reps if you treat them as such. But if you're treating it as us versus them, you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt on things. You're going to drive distrust. You're going to really, as a rep, there were dealerships that I hated going into, right? I did not love going into some of these dealerships, where the ones that I loved going into, man, we had good relationships and we got stuff done, right? And I think that's such an important relationship to have.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of times the reps that come in, they have an agenda. They didn't create these programs. It's their job to come in and introduce these programs to you. And we think, well, that's our only window to talk to the manufacturer, so I'm going to tell them what I think. Well, all that's going to do when they go back and they have their Zoom meeting or whatever else, or their regional meeting, is there's a lot of noise out there. But if you sit down and you have the conversation that, hey, here's why I think we need to look at that differently, that's what they take back, because they want to stand out as well. Now you've given them something to talk about rather than, man, all these dealers are complaining. But then, like you said, sometimes you dread going to certain stores. Well, that relationship's not one-sided either. If I'm always resisting everything that you bring to me, whether I like it or not, there is times that I do need some help to overcome an obstacle, whatever it may be, whether it's to get some assistance for a service issue or get some assistance to move somebody into another vehicle. There's times I need that help. And I can't get that help if I build a wall between the rep and I. And you got to create that relationship so that they want to help you when that phone rings, and they want to push through walls to help you overcome those obstacles. So when they come into your store, they can be the hero for showing up there, because they know they're not the hero at most other places. So they schedule to come to your store for 4 hours rather than 2 hours, because they want to come there and have fun, and they want to help you. And that continues to compound and build over time. And yes, it starts over when they move reps around or whatever else. But if that's the mindset, then people want to be the rep for your store.
I have a feeling that when a Ford rep comes to Bozard, that they feel pretty comfortable there. The way that you've set up the campus and the way that, that warm feeling, I don't think is just employees. It's not just customers. I think it extends to your vendor partners. I've, to this day, not seen somebody with such an open door policy as what you've got. I saw Dave Foy come down and buy a Bronco from you. I know Kate from our team was down there and echoed everything that we talk about and what we've discussed in the past. So it's not just like a one-off thing where you're teaching or you're treating one person one way and then another person another way. There's a level of respect that I think, again, from the top down, from Bo and Letty within you, and like that all the way down, you guys make people feel welcome.
It's in our DNA, and that's the way we want to do business. We want to connect with our community. We want to connect with the manufacturer. We want to connect with our vendors. We want to connect with our customers. And we want to be top of mind when there's anything that you may need, no matter what it is, whether it's roadside, whether it's maintenance, whether it's service, whether it's another vehicle, whether it's your kid's first vehicle. We want to be the only person that comes to mind. And that doesn't happen because we tell you that. That happens because of the actions that we put in place for you to feel that.
I want to shift to the changing economy. And I think there's a lot of people that are nervous right now in terms of what's going to happen. I think a slowdown was needed at some level. We have to kind of back off here a little bit. It was bonkers it felt like the Wild West the past year, last year or two. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are about where we're headed in terms of our general economy, and really maybe what you're doing to prepare for something if you think something is going to impact your business.
So we all have, and yes, there is a lot of noise out there that things are going to slow down and what we're going to do. And the last, let's call it 2.5 years now, has really, we've had some severe ups, extreme ups, some lows, some uncertainty. And pandemic's 2.5 years old, almost 3 years old now. And we're getting to the point to right after the pandemic where things skyrocketed, and we thought, well, man, that was okay for that to happen because everything was good on the other side of it. And so there's always those ups and downs and or variations. And is there a variation that's going to slow down? That is the noise that's out there. But we're in the automobile industry, and we're in the needs and wants business. Nobody needs a new car. They want it. Nobody wants service, but they need it. So we cover both sides of that. And in times where economy does slow down, you have to push off the wants a little bit and hang on to the needs. Well, the service end of it is still needs. But from our side, we don't talk about it that way. We talk about it when it's election time and whatever else. We don't care what party you're voting for, what your beliefs are, whatever else. When it's done, we're done talking about it. Go vote, go put your word in. But we got to live life. Your kids got to live life. You got a home life. You got to keep going. We got a business. We got to keep going, no matter what regime goes in office. So we're not, when election's over, we're done. It's over. It is what it is. We're going to embrace it, move forward, and make the most of it. And that's what we got to do with, no matter what the economy does with our business as well. But let's look at it from if sales does slow down. If sales slows down, then service picks up because there's not a manufacturer out there. Tesla's trying to catch up with this, so let's take out Tesla out of that, but they're working to catch up. Outside of that, there's not a manufacturer out there that doesn't have a service department tied to the sales department. Every one of these vehicles needs service. And the longer they're in service, the more service they're going to need. It's no different than a brand new house. You may not have to do a whole lot to it now, but when it's 30 years old, you are doing some things and refreshing this. And the automobile's the same way. And so if sales does slow down in these coming months, we got to focus tighter on service. And when we focus tighter on service, we build that loyalty even stronger so that when they can replace that vehicle, you're still top of mind. You're the only one they think about. You're the only place they're going to go to. There's not a question of checking the other manufacturer down the road. It's a question of what does Bozard have? But let's look at it from, let's say the economy doesn't do anything and it's all in our mind. Or let me close that up a little bit because there's always that variation where it's not in our mind, it's this or whatever. Well, let me close that up a bit. The average dealer only services 30% of the vehicles that it sells. So that means 70% is going elsewhere. What if you grew that to 35%? For us, we're at 78%. Well, we bucked that trend a bit. But what if you moved at a point or 2 points or 3 points? I don't think we have anything to worry about. And in order to do that, we have to find ways to connect with our customer. And another thing that we talk about a lot at our store, and this does tie to economy and whatever's happening out there and whatever, in my opinion, is the reason why dealerships are dreaded so much is we try to force everybody through the same process. Let's look at it from a generational standpoint. Jay, your buying habits is much different than my buying habits. But when you go to a car dealership, I'm going to run you through the same processes that I'm going to go through. And we're not meeting customers at their level. And that's another way to create that loyalty standpoint, is to meet customers at their level and take them down the path that they want to go down. If they want to buy a car remotely online, let them buy it remotely online and deliver it to their house. If they want to go through most of it online and then come in and drive it before they commit, let that take place. Create those avenues. And same with service. Don't force them to come in your hours or whatever else. Create opportunities for you to go to them in the right opportunity. That's why we're so big in mobile service, because I want to meet customer on their terms rather than force them through mine. And if we focus on any one element of those, any one element, you will gain market share. And if you gain market share, you don't have to worry about what the economy is doing. So at Bozard Ford Lincoln, I'm not concerned who ends up in office. I'm not concerned with what the economist says is happening. We're going to look at the opportunities that we're not capitalizing on and try to pick up something and make it better.
Man, is that good advice? I think being able to separate the macro from what you're doing on your in your day-to-day life, because at the end of the day, it's probably not going to have that big of an impact on what your day-to-day life looks like. You're going to go to work. You're going to do the best that you can. You're going to, you're going to control what you can control. And I think the less you let that outside noise dictate your business and your personal life, I think the better. Manage what's in front of you. And I think so many people get caught up in the noise that it distracts them most days. And I don't think that's healthy. And it's hard not to do, right? I know you turn on the news and that's all you hear. It's why I try to watch the news as little as humanly possible. But it is one of those things where you hear about election coverage and you hear about all of this stuff, and it drives negativity. You're not accomplishing anything by really talking about it. I think it's smart to just be able to see what might be coming. But beyond that, I don't know that you get a whole lot of benefit out of it as it pertains to your day-to-day life. And I think in a lot of cases, it's the opposite. It backfires and it makes people negative. So I like your approach to, once it's done, move on, because you're not going to accomplish anything by talking about it.
Exactly. It's okay to be informed. You can watch it, you can pay attention to it, and you can be informed, but don't let it control your decisions. And capitalize on opportunities that's in front of us. All of us has opportunities. I mean, we had just closed out a huge month, one of the biggest sales months we've ever had, the biggest parts month we've ever had. All those elements, but we're not going to sit back and say, "Hey, we did a great job." We're going to look back and say, "Here's some opportunity that we need to work on to make us better." And when you do that, those record months comes month after month after month after month, because every day we're looking to do something to make an impact on our business to make us better. And some days we strike out and we don't, but tomorrow's a new day. And that's the cool part about it. Tomorrow's a reset. Yesterday didn't go the way we wanted to, but we're trying again tomorrow. And as long as you're trying, you will make progress.
You talk about forward thinking. One of the examples that comes to mind with how you run your business was full embrace of mobile service. I think you were, in my opinion, were one of the first ones, and I don't know, there's no factual data to back this up. Maybe there is. But you were one of the first ones to just fully embrace mobile service as a dealer. Walk me through that process, why you thought it was important, and really how you've grown that. It's fun to watch the progress of it. I think you've done a phenomenal job at documenting the progress of it. But talk me through that mobile service element a little bit. I believe I'm starting to see other dealers start to do it, but you were one of the first. So I'd love to hear about your thought process as you looked at that, and then how it's progressed from there.
So one, I want to touch on that. I was scrolling through LinkedIn a couple of days ago, and I saw a poll, and polls are very popular on LinkedIn now. And one of the polls there was, what are you going to do in 2023 to make an impact on your business? And for the first time ever, one of the things on that poll was implement or grow mobile service. And I thought, hey, they're getting the picture. But for us, we really didn't become visual with mobile service until the very end of 2019. Most of you guys listening to this podcast know the history of Bozard. Some may not, but 10 years ago, we had 41 total employees. And with that, you don't hit a lot of elements that you need to hit because that's not who you are. And in 2015, we decided that we wanted to have a commercial sales department. And if we want to have a commercial sales department, we just don't want to have a commercial sales department. We want to have a dominating commercial sales department. And in order to do that, how do we shift to creating a department that people want to move away from the relationship they've had for 20 years and move to us, sometimes even changing brands? And we said we're going to do it because we're going to minimize their downtime. And we're going to minimize their downtime with going to them to take care of whatever service needs they need. And if the vehicle doesn't need to come off the ground for more than an oil change, then we can do everything there. If there's a mechanical failure where I got to pull the transmission apart or pull a cover off of an engine, yes, but that's very small percentages. So we devised a little trifold pamphlet of why Bozard. And most of that trifold was about mobile service and minimizing downtime and keeping hands up, because when a fleet customer sends their vehicle to you, they've had to send it to you usually with the one that drives it. So they're paying that person a skilled rate to sit in your service office or service lounge while the vehicle's being serviced. They're paying you to service it. And then it's got to travel back to wherever its next stop is before it can become productive. So they're spending hundreds of dollars in addition to what they're spending with you in lost production and still paying wage to have their vehicle serviced. And what we told them is we'll come to you when you're having a company meeting, or we'll come to them wherever to where there is minimal downtime, if any, and people latched onto it. And it grew faster than we thought. So we did it with unbranded vehicles from 15 to 19. And we worked with Ford on putting together some branded vehicles. And at the end of 19, we got our first branded vehicle that said Ford Mobile Service. And then we added the word Bozard to it because we wasn't just going to promote it for Ford, we was going to promote it for ourselves. And now we're branded on it, and it became a billboard, rolling billboard. So we're doing the same service, but we're still focusing on fleet. And then instantly, with having the billboard rolling around, it created a higher demand. So I immediately ordered a second truck. By the end of December of 19, I ordered a second truck. The world shut down on March 12th of 2020. We got our second truck March 11th of 2020. And then that was our opportunity to introduce mobile service to our customer base. So has it grown more than we ever anticipated? We knew it would be embraced on the fleet side, but it wasn't our original mindset in 15. But as we talked about the things that you can't control, look at it and see what you can do to make a difference in it. And that's one of the things that we could do during that time. People was afraid to leave their house, and there was this and there was that. And when a customer comes into a dealership, they're going to meet the valet, and they're going to meet the advisor, and they're going to sit in a chair that hundreds of other people have sat in. And none of that stuff was accepted during that time. And they was okay with someone coming to their house and they're having to maybe wipe the steering wheel down or whatever because only one person was there. And it just became so widely accepted, with customers feeling brave enough to make an appointment to come in for service early on during the pandemic, and then freaking out the day that they need to come in and call and cancel it or miss it. And we call them back and say, hey, I understand things may have come up. We know what you need. Why don't I come to you and take care of it? What do you mean? And it became so widely accepted. I still do not advertise mobile service on my website, and I'm running 8 trucks. And the reason why I don't advertise on my website is because I can't keep up with it with 8 trucks, and we're on our way to 11. And to say, I don't know that will work in my area, and that's what I hear from a lot of dealers. I say, I don't know that'll work here. It works for you. I don't know that'll work here. Well, I am in a town of 50,000 people, and yes, that's not extremely rural. The county's a total of 200,000, but it ain't metro by any means. And I keep as many trucks busy as I can put on the road. And in addition to that, that's 8 more service bays that I didn't have to build structure for at the dealership that are still producing flat rate hours, still taking care of our customers, and creating a loyal base. Because when we take care of a customer with a mobile, they don't question where they're going to go again. They are locked in because you've made it convenient for them.
What have you learned doing this? I have to imagine. I mean, it's a different type of business. I was on the equipment business for a big part of my career, and mobile service was part of that, right? You had farmers where you were going out and fixing their equipment, or contractors on a job, or whatever it might be. And there's some different elements to it that I don't think people fully understand. We used to charge travel time to a customer. I don't know if you guys do that on the automotive side or not, but curious as to what your learnings are as you've built this mobile business.
So the mobile element continues to evolve, and we started off when going to see a customer, a personal customer, with not charging a fee early on. With our fleets, we told them that as long as we're coming to service 4 or more vehicles, there's no trip charge. We'll come service whatever, but there's a $50 trip charge if we're coming to service less than 4. So they would intentionally try to make sure they had 4, 5, 6 vehicles there, so we can make a stop for the day with that vehicle, and that vehicle's there all day long. And that's another thing that a lot try to think, well, can we do that? Well, you got to minimize the windshield time. But what we have learned, or some of the stuff that we learn every day, is nobody likes the word fee. And so you got to find different ways to do it. And what we shifted to about a year ago, and we're still working with it. We are not 100%, because let's face it, this business on the automobile side has not been around very long. Like you said, with equipment side, it's been around forever. AC, your home HVAC system, you don't take it in and get it fixed. They come out and fix you. So mobile service has been around. It just hasn't been accepted so much in the automobile industry. So we're continuously learning because we're still young into it. But what we have shifted to is pricing if it's done mobile service. So an oil change that costs this in the dealership costs this if we come to you. And it's not that we compare those two when we're talking, if you're asking about mobile service, here's what it is for us to come to you, or here's what it is for us to come out and do it. And so there's never those comparisons. If they ask, we give it to them, but they never, ever say no, because the convenience factor is there. But what we're building in is, depending on what that may be, is $30 to $50 in addition to what that service would be for the travel time to get there.
Interesting. How do you keep their work areas clean? That was one thing when looking back at the service business, and especially when I was in the equipment business, we sold lawnmowers and that type of thing too. And we would get, it might have been, hey, there was a drip of oil on the driveway, and the person would be very upset. And actually I had one client at one point, it wasn't much. It was a little oil spot, right? And our tech had screwed up and let some oil run down a kind of a frame rail that ended up on the driveway. And not a good look. That's not what you want whatsoever. But mistakes happen, and it happened. This customer was demanding that we basically tear up his driveway and pour a new driveway. So I'm curious, and that's just one story, and it was a unique story. It didn't happen, but once in my career. Have you learned anything in that regard? How you do it in a clean way? We know vehicles where you pop the drain plug off and there's a frame rail right underneath it, and it makes it really difficult to keep the area clean. Any best practices of how to keep a work area clean? Because when you're doing it at somebody's home, it is different than in a shop.
Yes, so I want to touch on that from a couple things. So first, I'll answer that, and then we'll talk about what we do as a rule with mobile. There is times that you are going to service, change oil out in the mobile truck. It's not primarily what we do, and we'll talk about that in a second, but let's talk about that. And there is times, like you said, that no matter what you do, when you pull that drain plug out or you pull that filter off, it drips down onto other things. And when it drips down onto other things, it's almost impossible to get it all off without having a drip go elsewhere. And so in those events, in all those events that we do it, we double mat what we're putting it on. So we put a blue tarp down that we drive the vehicle over, as we're setting up. And then there's another mat that is an absorbent mat that we lay down over that if anything does drip, it goes onto that. And so have we had a lot of issues with that? No. And that sounds like a lot. No, it's not. You cut some absorbent mats up, you have them ready to go. Your blue tarp's still the same. You replace it every couple of months. So when you get there, you got a strip, you lay down on it, you drive the vehicle over it, you're there. But there has still been an occasion where we've dropped a couple drops of oil here or there or whatever. And we'll do our best to get it up. And if we can't, we'll do the right thing. And thankfully, one that we couldn't do it on was a pavered driveway, and I only had to replace 2 pavers. But the sooner you react to it, rather than fighting it, that oil kind of seeps its way down. The sooner you react to it, the more likeliness of you being able to correct it. And if my guy spills oil on somebody's driveway, he's telling us before he's even telling the customer, because we need to go ahead and shift into what we need to do that. And he'll put a degreaser down on it, and we'll send somebody out behind him to pressure wash it, and it comes up. But in the event that it doesn't, we'll do what we got to do to make it right. But we have gotten pretty well down to where that is almost never, because in the event that oil is going to drip on a cross member or whatever else, we'll suck the oil out of the vehicle rather than drain the oil out of the vehicle. And we suck the oil out, and the trucks are equipped to do that. When we suck the oil out, there's almost zero chance of losing any oil. So it depends on the vehicle and how we drain it. But what I want to talk to the audience about is it's not just about changing oil out there. Yes, with fleet businesses, there's a lot of oil changes. But from a customer standpoint, there is some, but that's not the majority. We have connected vehicle data, so a customer calls you with a check engine light. We know what those codes are because we got the data. We know whether we can fix it out there. When a customer comes in and does a repair with us and tells us about something else that we have to order a part for, we know whether we can put that part on with the mobile truck or not. And so rather than bring them back in and inconvenience them, or that part becoming obsolescent because they never come and got it, or they showed it up 2 days after we sent it back to manufacturer because we didn't think they was coming to get it, we make it a convenience rather than inconvenience and go to them and install that. But if you walk through your shop and you look at what's taking place out there, and you look at how many vehicles are being worked on that the lift is not even set on, you can start getting a mindset of what can be done in field. And those are the things that we want to do. We want to do more than just an oil change in field, because oil changes are easy to find for our customers. They don't have to come to us. There's all kinds of oil change facilities out there. Those places are easy to find. That's not necessarily overcoming the obstacle and making it convenient for them. It's preventing them from ever having to come in for service is what allows them to create the loyalty of, you're the only person they're ever going to talk about. So now we have a tire van. We'll go out, we replace tires in mobile service. We have those elements that allows us to try to prevent customers from coming back in for service. And a lot of dealers think, well, how am I ever going to sell them another vehicle if they never come back? Well, if you don't go to them, they're not coming back anyway. So do you want to create that to where they don't want to go to the other brand because they can't get that level of mobile service from them, and they're only going to come back to you? Or do you want to risk them just going to the other brand, you never even known about it? So a lot of the performance elements of it is unmeasurable. But we know from having a 78% loyalty rate, and the national average is about 30%, that it certainly feeds to that.
Has it helped you with recalls or anything like that? Maybe some different benefits that maybe you hadn't thought about even prior to doing the mobile?
Recalls is huge for us on mobile because it's warranty rate. It's not a service rate, which is less expensive. So it allows us to allow the truck to make it profitable easier. But let's talk about recalls. All the manufacturers have recalls, and there's such as a high non-completion rate or non-completed rate with recalls across all brands. And that's simply because a customer gets a letter stating that they have a recall on their vehicle, and to them, their vehicle's operating fine. It's this, it's that. They're not going to inconvenience themselves to come get a recall done for something that's never going to affect them anyway. So it's just an inconvenience for them on top of not wanting to come to the car dealership in the beginning. We do a lot of recalls through mobile service, two ways. We do them for customers, but also we do them in routes as well. Other dealer inventory rotates frequently. And if I'm going to pass through by 3 dealers to go to a customer's house to do something I need to do there, I'm going to pull up their inventory, see what they have, see if they have some recalls of our brand that I could take care of. And on the way out or on the way back, we're stopping and building trip value along the way of heading to a customer's house. But then also, when I call a customer and say, hey, there's a recall that came out on your vehicle, we can come out to you and take care of that for you either today or tomorrow. I just didn't want you to be inconvenienced with having to come into the store and hang out here. Does that work for you? There again, we're building loyalty and we're building on our brand. And they don't say no.
You're extending your reach without them coming in. And I think having a coordinated effort and one that looks professional, you mentioned, anything from driving up on the tarp to even reaching out and saying, hey, we can come take care of that recall for you. You don't have to do anything. We'll come to you, is pretty game-changing stuff. I mean, that is, I've been one of those people that have had a recall on my vehicle, and the dealership is 30 miles from me, and it's not really all that close to anything that I'm associated with, unless I'm driving to the airport. But I could imagine where that, from a customer standpoint, is hugely helpful. One thing that I'm curious about then is, have you now hired like a dispatcher? How are you actually coordinating the vans themselves?
So Jasmine is our mobile service advisor, so to speak. And Jasmine has a relationship with all of her techs, and she's the one that sets everything up. And if our technician doesn't feel comfortable talking to a customer about something that they find in field, that's who they reach out to, and then she'll reach out to them. But most of the time they take care of it. But yes, it is her job, and it's been somebody's job. It's moved around a bit, not from turnover, but because we've changed roles with different people. But it's moved around since we had 2 vans. When we had 2 vans, it needed to be tied to somebody. It can't just be, hey, see if the mobile truck's here. So it's been somebody's job. So where that's a central person in the store, where if even on a recheck we've messed up, we didn't put something back on or whatever, something's up, we all make mistakes, that advisor that took care of that customer can go over to Jasmine and say, hey, I got a customer we need to take care of. We messed up on this. We can fix it in field. Do you have availability? So, yes, Jasmine's kind of our coordinator. You can call her dispatcher, coordinator, service advisor. She's all things mobile.
And a talented person for sure. One thing that I can't help but think about as you're discussing this is how much of a leg up you're giving yourself as we transition to EV. I think when you look at the mobile business, it feels like it's right for the mobile business, right? It is made for mobile business because you're not dropping oil nearly as much. You're not doing those kind of dirty tasks that you'd be maybe afraid of in doing mobile service. And I can't help but think that's giving you a leg up on everybody, because you'll have a structured mobile service ready to go when those EV vehicles really become, the majority. Do you see that same thing, like where you're able to maybe get out in front of this, and that there's a lot of potential for mobile as it relates to EVs?
Man, that's a great point, Jay. We have, that's another element that the industry is resisting somewhat, that, oh my God, what is it going to do to my service department as these EVs become widespread? They don't need service. They don't need that. There is still things that they need, but it does lessen the need for them to come to a car dealership. And if our national average across all brands is 30% of our customers do business with us, do service business with us after they purchase a vehicle within that 10-year window, and they visit you just under 2 times a year, an EV vehicle's frequency rate is going to go down to probably 1 time a year. And if we double our VIN share, or go from 30% to 60%, then we notice no difference in the number of visits that roll through if it only needs service once a year. And we say, how can we double that? Well, we need to own EVs because there is not an independent out there yet that is structured to service EVs. So we should own 100% of those. But the frequency rate is going to be different. But if we don't prepare ourselves to own 100% of those, the aftermarket is resilient and they will adjust to it and they will have options. And then you have to compete against them. Well, they're yours until you choose not to. So chase that and make sure we're doing it. And one of the things that we can do is, rather than wait and see what these EVs need, let's create annual services for them. It's no different than servicing your home HVAC system, where they come out once a year or twice a year to service your HVAC with it working properly as preventative maintenance. We need to create annualized service visits for these. When we come in and we replace wiper blades, we replace cabin air filter, and we inspect the high voltage battery, and we still inspect the 12-volt battery that the vehicle has. And it can be more inspection based, but also we can tie into the updates for all the computers as well. There is some OTAs, the over-the-air updates that goes out, but those take so much longer because they have to send it in smaller packets, where we can bring it in and make sure that everything's updated and kind of give it that freshening once a year. And with that's to keep them coming into our service department. But with that, we don't need to lift those vehicles to do any of that. We can do almost everything that an EV is going to need in-field. And that's where mobile is really going to give us the step up to where we can go out and offer those annual services at somebody's place of business. When they drive to work, I'll come in, take care of your car while you're there, be ready to go by the time you're ready to go to lunch, blah, blah, blah. There's zero downtime. And that's what we got to, when we make it convenient, they become loyal. Nobody ever has went to, I can't say ever, because someone's visited some Amazon warehouses, but nobody goes to Amazon to purchase. They go on their online, pull up their online store, and that's where they purchase. And we got to get rid of that mindset that I have to bring them to brick and mortar, because they don't need to. We need to come to them, but we also got to prepare our business to be ready for the EV and the EV shift that's going to bring, and make sure that we create the opportunity to hang on to the loyalty that we need.
From what you've seen out of EVs, I'm interested in the fact that you had mentioned, maybe only seeing that vehicle once a year. Do you see, and this is something I've read a little bit about, don't have firsthand knowledge of as of yet, is the fact that maybe your average RO on an EV is going to be substantially higher than what it is on an ICE vehicle, just because maybe you're not doing the maintenance items, but you're seeing more of the diagnostic type of items. Is that something reflective into what you're seeing as you're seeing some of these EVs out on the roads now?
So that is very much opinion based, and I'll give you, from my standpoint, and I'll give you my opinion on that. Right now, we don't know what's going to go wrong with these EVs. And the unfortunate part is we haven't trained our technicians well enough to know what's going to go wrong with them yet. So when an EV does come in with a problem, a lot of large components are getting replaced, or expensive components getting replaced to figure out what's going on with it. So it's caused that average RO to spike enormously. So if you look at it from the repair side of EVs, of what the cost per RO is, it's enormous. But I don't think it's going to stay that way. And that is very characteristic of what our industry has been, is our technicians kind of the last ones to figure things out, unfortunately. And we need to work on that to where they have a better path to understand these. But I don't think that's going to stay there. And I'll elaborate on that element a bit. When a manufacturer comes out with a new model or a new product or whatever it may be, a new gadget, accessory, whatever, it becomes, let's raise the awareness out there, and they go and do all these riding drives with the sales departments, and they print elements of it, and that's how they market the vehicle. And these customers buy the vehicle. There's a lot going on during the transaction of selling the vehicle and whatever else, and hopefully we've showed them how everything works, but sometimes they don't retain it, or maybe we didn't show them how it worked because we didn't know whatever. But we go out to these dealers, manufacturer goes out to the dealers, and they show off all this new stuff because that's how they're going to help them sell it. And then the customer leaves, they don't remember how it was supposed to work, so in their mind, it's not working. They make an appointment to come in for service. The advisor has never seen that option. The technician has never seen that option. And now they got to make a repair on it, not knowing how it's supposed to work. And then a component gets put on it. And then the customer takes it and thinks, oh, well, it's doing the same thing. You still didn't fix it. And we haven't done a good enough job educating our people on all this stuff very early on. New options that are coming out, new models that are coming out to where the service side of it understands it and have and be able to educate the customer when they come in, and not even be because we're degrading the brand image by making a repair on something that there's nothing wrong with. We just don't know how it works. And that's a little bit of where we're at with EVs. There hasn't been as much training on the technician side yet. So when something comes in, the manufacturer doesn't have a history of what's failing on it, and we end up putting these large components on it that may or may not fix it, but it drives that RO through the roof.
And at some level, the manufacturer doesn't even know yet, right? You can go through as much testing as you want, but maybe not in every geographic climate, the extreme heat, the extreme cold. I know they really, really try, but you can't factor in every variable that every customer is going to have. And so I think there's probably some level where the manufacturer and their tech support are even learning about, what it is that they need to do to adapt and to be able to diagnose these vehicles. So I think whether they like to admit it or not, there's probably some level of learning curve with them as well. And, I think working together, again, going back to that partnership, that true partnership, and I think there's value in a manufacturer being transparent about that with their dealer network to say, hey, listen, we don't have everything figured out yet, but that's why we want to work with you. We want to help, we'll send a tech support person out to come do some diagnostics with you. I think, again, going back to that partnership and having that open door so that rep feels comfortable coming in to, maybe go do some diagnostic work with you. I think that helps them make their product better and make their support better, but then also helps you as a dealership kind of take it to the next level as well.
Absolutely. Anything with new model stuff, new model training, there is courses that gets labeled with that, but it doesn't give enough for them to truly understand it and be educated on it.
As we're kind of, we've got limited time left in the podcast, I want to maybe pick your brain on the future of the industry. We've talked a lot about EV and maybe how you see it going. I don't know how many more years you're going to work, if it's 10, 20, 30, if you're going to work till you die. But how do you see this going? Is it something where you just kind of ride the roller coaster, or do you have kind of an outlook on how you want things to go with Bozard? I'd love to learn more about your vision as to where not only Bozard's going, but where the industry's going.
Well, I love the shift that we're having with EV, and we got to continue to do a great job of educating our people, putting butts in seats, getting them excited about product, and pushing that out rather than telling people why they don't want it, because they've done the research and they do want it. We got to meet them at their level. But I'm also excited about what is coming. And it's slowed down a little bit as far as autonomous, but autonomous is going to hit vehicles at some point because there's just so much opportunity with autonomous, with subscription-based ownership and various different things. And in metro markets, you can prevent a vehicle from being a deadhead going back after it's dropped some. So it cuts down traffic, cuts down accidents. There's so much that can come from that. And I hope that in my day, in my time while I'm still doing this, that I can see a time that we eliminate a customer's downtime of a vehicle being serviced because in their ownership experience, when it needs service, it fires up. It knows when they use it. It knows when it's not, the percentage of time is very minimal that could be used. And maybe it asks for approval, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's already preset, and it starts up in the middle of the night and drives to its service center that you have selected, and it gets serviced, and it's back in your driveway, and it's seamless, and you never even knew that it left. I look forward to those days taking place, and it's there the next morning ready to take you wherever you need to go, whether it's to work or shopping or whatever it may be. And so I look forward to the industry continue to revolutionize and those things coming into it. That may be 20, 30 years down the road, but I hope I live to see it because I believe that it's coming. But in the nearer future, or the near spectrum, it's EV. We have an infrastructure that works well with repairing, identifying, knowing what the capabilities are of ICE vehicles and the range that they can go and the repairability of them and how long they last. There's a lot of uncertainty on how long BEVs are going to last and what the battery technology is going to do. But that is the next thing that's rolling, and we need to be open to it and embrace it and be ready to shift and build the infrastructure to come along with it. Because if that would have been reversed, where vehicles first came out as being electric and then we were shifting to gas, the infrastructure wouldn't be there with gas stations either. So it's just the opposite right now, with it being the other. But it didn't start that way. It started with ICE. And our infrastructure is there. Let's embrace it. Let's make the most of it. And we work in an industry that has been rewarding to so many of us. And it's an industry that's made more millionaires than any other industry out there, period. But we can't allow that to continue to do that for us by resisting the change that's happening in the industry. It needs to happen. It's the reason why we have Tesla to compete with today is because nobody wanted to embrace the battery technology that was coming from that. And it was proposed to all the manufacturers. Nobody said no. So then the formation of Tesla comes along. And now we're trying to catch up with Tesla. So let's not resist what's in front of us. Let's embrace it. And when we embrace it, we can have a lot of fun with it and make a good living along the way.
This might be a tough question, but do you ever think about the legacy that you're leaving in the industry and what you do? As somebody that's as influential as you are throughout our entire industry, is it something that ever comes to mind? The legacy that you're leaving and what you're doing and how much of an impact that you're having?
I don't do it to have a legacy, but I will tell you that I try to make sure that I create a path to allow people to be able to take themselves as far as they want to go. And if that's surpassing me and whatever, I'm all game for that. But I will tell you, it's extremely cool when someone that has worked for me 10 years ago and they have moved on to run their own store or whatever else, and you run into them after not seeing them for 10 years, and they tell their wife, "This is the guy that gave me the opportunity. We wouldn't be where we're at today if it wasn't for this." That is pretty freaking gratifying. And I never set out for any of that, but I'm at that point in my career where I get that, and I'm fortunate to get that. I'm blessed to get that, and I got to tell you, I get emotional every single time that happens because that's cool. And I came from very humble beginnings, and that opportunity wasn't necessarily dangled out there, but somebody gave me a little opportunity, and I was able to carve my way through it. And if we could just make that path a little easier for the ones behind us, and then hopefully the ones behind me are doing the same thing, they're carving that path a little bit, then we can change the perception of what this industry is. And that's what I enjoy doing is taking away that stigma that this industry has earned over so many decades and allowing people to grow beyond their belief of their own potential.
It's funny, we work so hard for money and numbers and goals, but I've had the same feeling in that the most rewarding pieces of this industry are people related, and seeing the growth in people and seeing, those relationships. One of the things when we started the business that was something that I could have never dreamed of was that there are people that have developed lifelong relationships outside of work that stemmed from here, right? And it's such a weird thing to think about, but when I look at that, that's the stuff that it warms my heart as much as anything in the world. Is that there's been relationships, lifelong great friends that have come from working here, and I'm sure you see the same thing down there. But it is, as you're talking about legacy and what you're doing, you didn't hear a word about numbers, right? You heard about people. And I think that speaks to your leadership style and who you are and why you're so successful. And you're leaving one heck of a legacy, my friend. You're doing some pretty amazing things and growing some pretty amazing people. So from everybody in the industry, I think we all speak on this, that we appreciate everything you're doing out there and the example that you're setting for everybody else to get better, and really the care that you have to come on a podcast like this and share some of your secrets or your competitive advantages amongst the masses, because you just care about people. And I think that is maybe the highest compliment I can give anybody. So I genuinely appreciate you taking almost 2 hours out of your day as you're traveling to Arizona to join us and talk about some pretty incredible stuff.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity, Jay. This is what I enjoy doing. I like helping people grow, and I want to leave the audience with one thing that I do at the end of all of my staff meetings. And I go around the room, and each department has got to give me a bright spot, because a lot of times we find what people are doing wrong, or we're problem identifiers. This isn't right, that isn't right, and that's what we make noise about. But when you catch somebody doing the right thing and you let them know that you call them doing it and you talk about it, they want to do more of that. And when they want to do more of that, that boat just starts going faster and faster. And so don't just be a problem identifier. Look for the ones that are doing the right things and let them know that you called them doing the right things, and thank them for doing it. So ask yourself to find a bright spot in every area that you're involved with. You don't have to be in a leadership role to do that, but every area that you're involved with, find a bright spot of the day that you can talk about and you can say something to somebody with, and I'll assure you they'll want to do it again.
Good stuff to leave on. That makes you want to come back to not only come back to work the next day, but run through a wall for somebody. That's I think so many good lessons throughout this podcast. So much great insight. Thank you again, Ed. We can't thank you enough for everything you do for us and just the industry as a whole. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay. Glad to be a part of it.
That wraps up this week's episode of Beyond the Wrench. Be sure to tune in next week for another brand new episode. As a reminder, don't forget to rate and follow Beyond the Wrench on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps us get Beyond the Wrench in front of other fantastic shop owners, managers, technicians, and dealers just like you, so we can continue to help improve, promote, and grow this amazing industry. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll be back next week.